Welcome back, everyone, to DRM News Global, where we take you deeper into the stories that everyone's talking about.
That's right.
And today we are diving headfirst into the world of John Wick.
A world of assassins and headshots and
Yeah, and so much more than that now, because it seems like Lionsgate is really taking this
they are.
franchise and expanding it in a big way.
Definitely. It's a really exciting time to be a John Wick fan. I mean, between the news that dropped at CinemaCon just a few days ago and the stuff that we've already known about, like Ballerina and the upcoming TV series,
Right.
it really feels like we're just at the beginning of a huge wave of John Wick content.
Yeah, so, I mean, what do you think is the biggest announcement for fans? I mean, we've got a lot to cover today, but where should we even start?
Well, I think for a lot of people, the news of John Wick Chapter 5 was the big one.
It was huge.
I mean, they kind of left things, I wouldn't say on a cliffhanger with Chapter 4,
Right.
but they definitely left the door open for more. And I think a lot of us were wondering if Keanu Reeves would even be up for it after.
Yeah, I remember that quote.
Yeah.
His knees.
Yeah, like my knees are telling me no more John Wick.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
honestly, after seeing Chapter 4 and just the level of action and the stunts,
It was intense.
I can't blame him for, maybe thinking twice about signing up for another round of that. But I guess the Baba Yaga just can't stay down for long.
Nope, it seems not. And you know what? I think that's what makes this announcement so exciting. It's not just that they're making another sequel, it's that Lionsgate is really hyping this up as a truly phenomenal and fresh story.
That's a really key point
Mm.
because after 4 films that have consistently pushed the boundaries of action cinema,
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a franchise that basically reinvented gun fu for a modern audience.
Right.
So for them to say that they have a fresh story to tell, it makes you wonder what direction they're going to go in.
Yeah, because Chapter 4 really did feel like a pretty definitive ending. I mean,
It did in a way. I mean, you have...
it felt complete. You had that sense of closure, but then Stahelski came out and said that the ending was intentionally ambiguous. So it's almost like they knew they might want to continue the story, and they gave themselves that wiggle room.
Yeah, I mean, you can't blame a studio for wanting to keep a successful franchise going. But I really appreciate that they seem to be approaching this with a genuine desire to tell a good story and not just cash in on the John Wick name.
Yeah, and I think that's where having the original team back is so crucial. I mean, Stahelski directing again with Iwanek and Lee producing it gives you that confidence that they're not just going to phone it in.
It's the dream team.
It is the dream team, and they've proven time and again that they understand what makes these films work.
Right, and I think that also speaks to the idea that Keanu Reeves is really the only one who could play this role. I mean, Stelsky has said as much in interviews that there's just no one else who could embody John Wick the way he does.
It's hard to argue with that. I mean, Reeves brings this really unique blend of physicality and stoicism to the character.
Yeah.
He can be both incredibly lethal and surprisingly vulnerable, and you just buy it completely.
Right, and it's not just the action. It's the way he conveys John Wick's grief, his weariness, his longing for something more than this life of violence.
Yeah,
I think that's what makes him so compelling to watch.
absolutely. And that's something that a lot of action heroes just don't have, that depth of emotion that makes you actually care about what happens to them.
Right, and I think that's why people are so excited about the prospect of a Chapter 5. I mean, we don't know any plot details yet, but I'm already invested just knowing that Keanu Reeves is back as John Wick.
Yeah, I think we're all eager to see where they take the story next, especially after the events of Chapter 4 and the hints that producer Basil Iwanek dropped last year about a potential time jump.
Yeah, I remember him mentioning that in an interview back in November of 23, and it really got me thinking about what that could mean for John Wick. I mean, if they jump forward in time, what kind of world will he find himself in?
That's a really intriguing question. I mean, think about it. A time jump could completely change the landscape of the high table. New alliances, new enemies, new threats emerging from the shadows, and we might even see a John Wick who's further down the path of trying to leave that world behind, or maybe he's been pulled back in. We just don't know.
Right, and that uncertainty is part of the excitement, I think. I mean, the possibilities are really wide open, and that's what makes speculating about Chapter 5 so much fun.
Absolutely. I mean, we can look back at the previous films and try to connect the dots, but ultimately this is uncharted territory, and that's always a good thing for a franchise that could easily fall into a formula.
Right, and speaking of uncharted territory, let's talk about the animated prequel, because this is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, this is a huge step for the franchise, and I think it has the potential to be something truly special.
It's a bold move for sure, and I think it speaks to the fact that they're not afraid to experiment with the John Wick universe.
And what better way to experiment than with animation, right? I mean, it opens up so many possibilities in terms of the visuals, the action sequences, the storytelling.
And they've got a great team behind it, too. Shannon Tyndall directing, who did Ultraman Rising,
Right.
which I thought was visually stunning. And then you've got Vanessa Taylor writing the screenplay, who worked on The Shape of Water.
So you've got a director who can handle epic action and a writer who can bring real emotional depth to the story. That's a pretty great combination.
Yeah, and then, of course, you've got Keanu Reeves voicing John Wick in the prequel, which is just the icing on the cake.
I mean, how could you have an animated John Wick without Keanu Reeves, right?
It wouldn't be the same.
It just wouldn't be the same. And, you know, this prequel is going to delve into the infamous impossible task, which we've heard so much about in the films, but we've never actually seen.
It's like this legendary event in John Wick's Path to Night that made him who he is.
Right. The night he eliminated all his rivals to secure his exit from the high table so he could be with Helen.
And to actually see that unfold in animation, I think it's going to be mind-blowing.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that it's animation means they can really push the boundaries of what's possible visually. I mean, imagine the kind of action sequences they can create when they're not limited by the constraints of live action.
Right, they can go full anime style, which is something that Chad Stahelski has always cited as an inspiration for the John Wick films.
Yeah, and you can definitely see that influence in the fight choreography and the overall aesthetic of the films. But with animation, they can really embrace that style fully.
I'm really curious to see how they handle the emotional aspect of the impossible task, because it's clearly a pivotal moment in John Wick's life. I mean, it's the night that he earned his freedom, but at what cost?
Right, and I think that's where having Vanessa Taylor on board as the writer is so important because she's great at exploring those kind of emotional nuances.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to remember that this is a prequel. So we're seeing a younger John Wick, a John Wick who's still very much in the game and hasn't experienced the loss and the disillusionment that we see in the later films.
That's a really good point because it's going to be fascinating to see how this younger John Wick approaches the impossible task and how it shapes him into the man we know he becomes.
Yeah, it's almost like we're getting an origin story for the Baba Yaga, and that's something that I think a lot of fans are really excited about.
Definitely. And the fact that this animated prequel is supposedly set to release sometime in 2025.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty soon, considering everything else that's going on with the franchise. It shows just how much Lionsgate is investing in this world.
Yeah, and they're not just focusing on John Wick himself.
Yeah.
They're branching out with other characters, like with the Kane spin-off movie.
Yeah, Donnie Yen's character was one of the standout elements of Chapter 4. I mean, he brought this really interesting dynamic to the film.
Totally. I mean, a blind assassin who's just as deadly as John Wick, if not more so.
And the fact that Donnie Yen is going to be both starring in and directing the spinoff, I think that's a really good sign.
Definitely. It shows that he's really invested in this character and in telling a story that's worthy of Kane.
And I think it's also a great opportunity to explore a different side of the John Wick universe because this film is going to be set in Hong Kong and production starts later this year.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm really curious to see how they handle the action in the Kane spinoff, because Donnie Yen is known for his incredible martial arts skills and his very distinctive fighting style.
Yeah, he's a legend in the world of Hong Kong action cinema, so I'm expecting some truly epic fight sequences in this film.
And I'm also interested to see how they delve into Kane's character, because we only got glimpses of him in Chapter 4, but there's clearly a lot more to him than meets the eye.
Yeah, he's this complex character who's been forced into a life that he doesn't necessarily want, and I think the spinoff is going to explore those themes of freedom and redemption.
Yeah, like what does it mean for someone like Kane to be freed from the high table's control?
Right. Is it really freedom if you're still haunted by your past and by the things you've had to do?
It's a really compelling question.
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to the larger themes of the John Wick universe. The idea that violence has consequences and that even the most skilled assassins are still human beings with emotions and regrets.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes these films so resonant with audiences. It's not just about the action. It's about the characters and the world that they inhabit.
And speaking of exploring different corners of the John Wick world, we also have Ballerina coming out on June 6th, 2025.
Yeah, that's going to be a big one, too. I mean, Ana de Armas is an amazing actress, and she's been training like crazy for this role.
Yeah, she's described it as her most physically demanding role to date, and I think that says a lot about the kind of commitment that this franchise demands from its actors.
Absolutely. And it's not just about looking good in the action sequences. It's about embodying the physicality of these characters and making the fights feel real and visceral.
And Ballerina is also interesting because it's set between John Wick, Chapter 3, Parabellum, and Chapter 4.
Right. So it's filling in a gap in the timeline and potentially giving us some insights into events that happen off screen in the main films.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how it all ties together and if we'll see any familiar faces from the John Wick world popping up in Ballerina.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a few cameos or at least some references to the events of the main films.
And then we also have the upcoming TV series, John Wick Under the High Table, which is still shrouded in mystery. But the title alone suggests that we're going to be delving deeper into the inner workings of this organization.
Definitely. I mean, the High Table has always been this kind of shadowy presence in the background, but we've never really seen the full extent of their power and influence.
Right. And I think a TV series is the perfect format for exploring that kind of complex world because they can really take their time and flesh out the different factions and the characters within the High Table.
And I'm also curious to see how they connect the TV series to the larger John Wick universe. I mean, will we see any crossover with the films, or will this be a completely standalone story?
Yeah, it's hard to say at this point, but I think it's safe to assume that there are going to be some connections there just based on the title alone.
Right, and the fact that Chad Stahelski is involved as a producer on the TV series, which I think is a really good sign because it means that there's going to be some continuity between the different projects.
Definitely. And I think all of this just speaks to the larger point that Lionsgate is really committed to building out the John Wick universe, and they're doing it in a smart way.
Absolutely. They're not just churning out sequels. They're expanding the world in different directions with different characters and different mediums, and they're bringing in talented people to help them tell those stories.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time to be a John Wick fan because it feels like we're just scratching the surface of what this universe has to offer.
And that's a great feeling to have. I mean, how often do you get a franchise that just keeps getting better and better?
And that's really what we've seen with John Wick. Each film has raised the bar in terms of the action, the world building, the characters, and it seems like they're just getting started.
Yeah, I think the future is very bright for the John Wick universe, and I can't wait to see what they come up with next.
Me neither. So to recap for everyone, John Wick Chapter 5 is officially happening with Keanu Reeves back in the saddle.
The saddle.
We're getting an animated prequel that will explore the legendary impossible task.
With Keanu Reeves voicing John Wick in the animated feature.
That's right. Donnie Yen is starring in and directing a Kane spin-off movie.
Which starts filming later this year.
Ana de Armas is kicking butt and taking names in Ballerina.
Coming out this June.
And then we have the TV series John Wick Under the High Table, which is still a bit of a mystery, but promises to delve deeper into the world of assassins and the High Table.
And all of this is happening while we wait with bated breath for John Wick Chapter 5.
Exactly. So it's a great time to be a John Wick fan, and we're going to be covering all of these developments as they happen. So make sure you're following DRM News Global for all the latest updates.
And be sure to let us know what you're most excited about in the comments. I mean, is it Chapter 5? Is it the animated prequel? Is it the Kane spinoff? We want to hear from you.
And here's a final thought for you to ponder as we wrap up today's show. Given the ambiguous ending of Chapter 4 and the hints of a time jump in Chapter 5, what kind of world will John Wick return to?
Will be a world that's moved on without him, or a world that's been waiting for his return?
And how will he navigate this new landscape as a man who's trying to find peace but can never truly escape his past?
It's something to think about as we eagerly await the next chapter in the John Wick saga.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the John Wick universe here on DRM News Global.
We'll see you next time.
See ya.